So I don't have a title of this talk yet. I'll just talk it and see if something emerges. Yesterday in my meditation, I had the experience of looking out at a vast inner space inside and feeling a deep, deep happiness. And several associations came to mind after this happened. And the first was a childhood story of the Buddha when he was young and watching a ceremony for plowing the earth, of which they were very connected to with their food and their ceremonies and their living. It's much more simple. But he went into a meditative state very naturally. This is what the texts tell us. And very naturally, very easily, and I've often heard it described as something like play, when one feels like one is playing, like you can't do anything wrong and hurt is very far away. And there's a kind of happiness in that state. So that's what came to mind. And then the second association that I had was, oh, this is like a free-floating happiness. It's like a general feeling of joy without any specific cause or association to it at the time. And it wasn't really due to any relationship or event that I could see. So I really don't know if I could continue practicing meditation without some happiness coming into the sittings, coming into my life, being a part of my practice. So I want to bring in the work of Bernat Font, Bernatfont. And he's a meditation teacher, a secular Buddhist and scholar. He's living in Thailand right now. And he got his PhD from the Buddhist studies from the University of Bristol. And he offers, and this is kind of his thesis and what he's on to right now, is a nuanced perspective on happiness with the early Buddhist teachings. And like reflective meditation, he challenges some of the early translations, interpretations of those teachings. So he emphasizes the role of positive effect, of what he calls, and this is Pali, joy, piti, and happiness, somanasa. And he says that they're an integral part of awakening. And it does challenge some of these traditional interpretations that have a fear of getting too happy, of too much pleasure, too much happiness, what that will do to you, and what that does, it means in a spiritual practice. And he brings in that progression, a traditional progression from pleasant to neutral feelings, and suggests that positive emotions are along the path. Don't discard them. Don't not try to help them flourish. They're actually essential. To me, it might make sense in our practice. This doesn't sound that revolutionary, but it is quite revolutionary in some forms of Buddhism. But he uses a translation of dukkha as vulnerability. And this is one of the characteristics of existence, of living an existential life. And he brings it in for the reason of saying that change, or the transient nature of life, is not always dukkha, that there's some pleasure in that too when things change. And he wants to take the traditional translation of life as unsatisfactory and kind of eliminate that, say that's not a kind of the right translation for dukkha. He says that sometimes change is satisfactory and is similar to us. So it's very interesting for me to read some of the Buddhist scholars, the secular Buddhist scholars that are coming out now and giving some of these translations. And it almost makes me feel like we were ahead of the curve at some of this, because we've talked about dukkha as vulnerability, probably over 8 years ago, we started using this translation, and we've added in, posited a fourth mark of existence, that we have needs, and we've talked about the language of experience, and that the Buddhist teachings are really based on your experience of them, not just the concept of them. So it's a little foreshadowing and validating to see these come out with secular scholars that I'm reading these days. So Bernat also, he posits a hedonic curve. And this is that practitioners are moved through certain stages on the path, stages of pleasure. And he's basically positing that your pleasure will be refined and more refined, and that the curve goes into eventual equanimity. So this framework really stresses the importance of working with pleasurable states. So I love that part, because I think that emotions are, one's emotional experiences are part of spiritual development. And it's been a glaring error to regulate emotions to the bottom of the heap, or to women's work is often how I've heard it. And I liked this statement, which I pulled off of the internet. Society has often assigned emotional labor to women, reinforcing gendered expectations that undervalue emotional intelligence and caregiving. And we actually uppervalue that. I don't want to say overvalue it, but we've brought it into our practice and tried to make that, a part of the Dharma that's as important as other teachings. But what's interesting about Bernat's work is, I think happens to any of us, is that we have this combination of reinterpretation of texts while holding traditional values, and where some values are still upheld. And this traditional curve of progress is something that I really question, that pleasure progresses to equanimity, and that equanimity trumps happiness. And I want to question that, because the certainty of that map, and in Buddhist texts you can see it written quite a bit, is there's stages of progress. But the certainty of that map, that equanimity is at the top, it's endured for centuries. So I can't say that it's untrue, or that there's not value to it. But I want to go a step further of questioning not just is happiness or emotions part of the path, but what's at the top of the map? What's the aim? What's the goal? So I'm trying out another map, a little different curve of reflective meditation, provisional, of course, and going more in the direction of that the practice of describing your experience, whatever that may be in meditation, whatever's going on, the complex range of what's happening in a meditation sitting, including any thoughts and feelings, and that integrating that into a life well lived is our map. We're really looking to put our experience into that map so that it becomes part of our daily life. And that I really feel then the curve comes from your own inner hierarchy. What do you think is the most important, or that brings you the most spiritual progress, if you even want to use that term, and what can be developed from the conditions of your life? Okay, so I'll end here. Welcome to anyone that may be